Hello, everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to the Gender Libertarian Podcast. If you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Libertarian Institute, and I do also have a Patreon page, the link I will put in the show notes. So usually when I do the weekly roundups, I try to do these in chronological order, starting with the beginning of the week and then working towards the end of the week, but for obvious reasons this week, we are going to do this a little differently and a little backwards because there has been some rather momentous breaking news that broke last night / this morning / throughout the day. And that is that apparently, for real this time, unlike the other 3 or 4 times we've been told this, the founder and leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, is dead. For real, apparently, this time. From what I've been able to gather and from what reports have said, there was a raid led yesterday afternoon / early evening-ish in which we did send in special forces, and he apparently detonated a suicide vest, killing himself and 3 of his children and injuring a U.S. Armed Forces dog. From what I understand, the dog is going to be okay, but there were no troops injured. And so that seems to be what has happened. I've seen reports that they have confirmed through biometrics, through DNA testing, that it was actually Baghdadi who did blow himself up. So I guess it's for real this time. So this all broke in the only way that this kind of thing can possibly break anymore, because it's 2019 and Trump is the president. The first whiff of this we heard was last night, and I'm recording this on the 27th, so this would have been on the night of the 26th, which was a Saturday night. So just to give you a bit of flavor of how this went down, Trump slid into Saturday night Twitter at about 9:30 in the evening and posted up this very vague tweet about something big has just happened. And then that was it. That's all he tweeted. So for a moment there, Saturday night Twitter got to have a lot of fun with making poop jokes and all sorts of other jokes about the president. But apparently he was referencing this operation. And I was waiting because I'd seen initial reports start to trickle out, but there was nothing really official. And then once major news outlets started reporting on it, it's like, okay, this is a thing. So yeah, it seems for real this time. We got him. Mission accomplished. Yeah. Allegedly. 4th or 5th time's the charm, right? That's how that saying goes. But the reaction to this has obviously been rather interesting and weird. Trump actually did a press conference at about 9 o'clock this morning. And as you would expect, I mean, I didn't watch it because I already knew what it was going to be. But of course, he starts out with announcing the operation and the death of Baghdadi, and he thanks all of the people involved, starting with Russia and ending with the Kurds, which many people have made quite a bit of noise about that, which, yeah, I think the Kurds should have been a little higher on the list. I don't know, but that's what that was. And so it went from being something of a somewhat decent, normal presidential announcement of such an operation. And then, of course, because it's Trump, just kind of devolved into it all being about him. And yeah, it just got weird and rambly. Like, I mean, if you know anything about Trump, and if you follow Trump's Twitter accounts, you know what his Sunday morning tweets look like. This was that in like actual IRL coming out of his mouth form. So yeah, Sunday morning Trump is not exactly the most coherent or presidential thing on the planet. And so just we got tweeted to that on a Sunday morning. On a Sunday morning. Political Twitter cannot even take off weekends anymore, people. We can't even have our Saturday nights and Sunday mornings anymore. But we went from that, and the reaction has been, yeah, kind of all over the place. I mean, you have people who rightfully want to congratulate the president and our troops for pulling off this mission and killing Baghdadi. Okay, cool. And then you have the Washington Post, who got it right the first time they put the headline out there, because they had called Baghdadi, I believe they called him the terrorist in chief, and when they were doing their official obit for him. And so they got it right the first time. And then for some inexplicable reason, they decided to scrub that headline, replace it with a headline describing Baghdadi as a religious scholar. Again, this is the head and founder of ISIS. One of the most evil organizations on the planet. All of a sudden, he gets this whitewash treatment, and then everybody freaked the hell out, and then they finally came around to, I think they finally landed on calling him an Islamic extremist and the founder of ISIS, which is still underselling it quite a bit, because if you don't know, I mean, especially Baghdadi himself, I mean, he was not just a figurehead. He did actively participate in the orderings of various attacks, beheadings, rapes, all of it. He was involved. So this wasn't like he was just sitting in a room somewhere, just kind of minding his own business, reading the Quran. Like, no, this was a bad dude. He was a bad dude. But so we got that. And then Bloomington, for some reason, felt the need to go along those same lines and kind of minimize who Baghdadi was. And yeah, it's like, can you not do this right now? Like, I get it. I get that y'all don't want to give Trump a win, but can we not whitewash the head of ISIS in the process? Like, this is a guy that committed atrocities that are like almost unspeakable. And you can say it's a good thing that he's dead. You can. It's okay. But it's the reaction has been very, very weird today. And kind of the latest dust up on Twitter over this is people have been trying to Zapruder the actual official White House Situation Room photo, because for reasons I don't thoroughly understand, apparently there always needs to be a photographer in the room to try to capture this great historic moment. Like, I'm sure everybody remembers the picture from when they got Osama bin Laden, the Situation Room picture from that. So now we have this Situation Room picture for this situation. And apparently the person who originally started this kind of conspiracy theory that it was staged got the timing wrong on the timeline for the attack itself, because they had originally reported that it started at 3 p.m, which when they were lining up the timestamps for the picture, it didn't line up. But it seems like the attack actually started a little after 6 o'clock, which means the timelines do match up. And for what it's worth, Trump made his tweet at about 9:30 on Saturday night. So I would say that is a pretty good benchmark for figuring out when exactly he knew, because you know he didn't sit on that information. You know he fired off that tweet the moment he knew Baghdadi was dead. So yeah, it's another one of these whole weird non-controversies, because one person got critical information wrong, but it fit everybody else's narrative of what they wanted this to be. So it got tens of thousands of retweets and just spread everywhere. And of course, the retraction has not gotten nearly the traction. And of course, we did not delete the original tweet, because why would anybody delete the original tweet? That would only be like the same logical thing to do. But anyway, that has been media reaction to this whole situation. Now, I want to take it back a little further and kind of try to unpack what does Baghdadi's death mean right now in this current political moment. And quite frankly, and this is a hard one to judge right now, because all this has happened over the span of a Saturday night and a Sunday. So there's a lot of people who kind of check out of the internet and the news over the weekend. So I'm very curious to see what general public reaction is going to be to this once everybody kind of wakes up tomorrow and starts digesting news again, and you start getting more opinions out there than you would get during a weekend news cycle. here's the thing. And a lot of people are comparing this to, obviously, the Osama bin Laden operation. And while there are similarities, especially in the way it seems like this all went down, it was a special forces operation. They went into where they knew he was living. Obviously, Osama bin Laden did not blow himself up with a suicide vest, but ultimately, special forces did end up killing bin Laden and dumping his body in the ocean. Baghdadi blew himself up, but anyway, at the end of the day, they're both dead. Yeah. Here's my thing. And here's what I'm very interested in seeing. And to me, this isn't getting bin Laden big because of two reasons. One, and I'm very curious to see this too. I think there is very much a generational split here between people who lived in a pre-9/11 world and people who did not, which, as insane as this is going to sound, next year, there will be people who are old enough to vote for President of the United States who were born after 9/11. People who have never, ever lived in a pre-9/11 world. And even beyond that, you have people who were tiny babies or children or in elementary school when 9/11 happened. So I think for those of us who lived through 9/11, the Osama bin Laden thing was huge, obviously, because he was the mastermind of the 9/11 attack. So him being killed, while even when that happened, it was, I won't say largely symbolic, but it was symbolic in the way in that Al-Qaeda had already been severely weakened by that point. So obviously getting Osama bin Laden wasn't nothing, but it wasn't as drastically major as it would have been even if we did it 5 years prior to when we had done it. But it was a big deal because of 9/11. I don't know if anybody feels the way about Baghdadi the way people felt about bin Laden. I don't know how many people even know who Baghdadi is outside of certain political bubbles or people who tend to pay attention to Middle Eastern politics or pay attention to ISIS or anything like that. There's not that big cultural weight associated with Baghdadi that there was with Osama bin Laden. So the second thing I'm very curious to see about, especially with the generational split, because I've seen people make this argument, is that younger people will feel more the way us older people felt about bin Laden because they grew up with kind of, insofar as there was another bin Laden, Baghdadi being that bin Laden. But here's my thing. I don't think a lot of young people, especially because if you did grow up in a post 9/11 world, this has been your whole life. There was never that one like defining moment with ISIS that there was with Al-Qaeda. So when something is just part of your day-to-day life, I don't think you weight it quite as much as when there is like that one really big thing that changes everything. So I don't think people of any age are going to get as hype about Baghdadi being dead as they did about bin Laden being dead. It stands to be seen one way or the other, and for what it's worth, I think it's, sure, great, he's an awful fucking evil man, deserves to be dead, but I don't know if this is going to be kind of that moment. You know what I'm saying? I'm very curious to see how this is going to play out. And I'm curious to see how long this news cycle is going to last, because obviously after the bin Laden operation, there was that glow for quite a while because, I mean, it was, like I said, it was bin Laden. That was the number one boogeyman of all the world, and we got him, and he's dead. I think Baghdadi not being as big a name as bin Laden, plus just the fact that there's so much other stuff going on a daily basis that I wonder how long this is really going to stay in the news, because it's just like, I mean, obviously we did not live in a scandal-free world under the Obama administration, but this administration, it's just like every damn day. every damn day there is something new to talk about. And it's like, I don't know how much permeance this is going to get, and I don't know if this is really going to move the needle as far as anybody changing their opinion about Trump or about this administration or about anything that's going on domestically. The only thing I can see maybe happening, and I give this a huge maybe, is that people will see that, oh, we killed the head and founder of ISIS, therefore we should be pulling troops out of the Middle East because we defeated ISIS, air quotes there. I wonder if that is going to happen. I'm not holding my breath, but yeah, I don't know how this is going to play out in the general public as far as this making a dent in the news cycle. And that's a weird thing to think about. Like, the U.S. took out the head of ISIS, and I don't know if we're going to be talking about that 3 days from now. This is how insane of a world we live in right now. Like, it's wild to think about, and to think about how much things have changed, especially since the Bin Laden operation versus the Baghdadi operation, and to look at the reactions to it. And yeah, I think it's going to make for an interesting contrast. And I would say if anybody has the time or inclination to do more of a deep dive on that, once the Baghdadi news kind of starts settling in for people, go for it. I think that would be super duper interesting, just because there's so many parallels that can be drawn and so many kind of similarities yet glaring differences that I think it would be interesting for somebody to do a deep dive on that. But as for right now, that's about all I have on that. So let's go ahead and rewind a little bit to some other things that happened this past week, because there has been a lot going on. In fact, I don't know if I'm going to have time to squeeze all of this in, but I'm going to try to get in as much as possible. To kick this particular week off, Bill Taylor ended up testifying before a congressional committee as far as impeachment inquiry is concerned. Now, if you will remember how this kind of whole thing started, Bill Taylor was the one in the infamous texting quid pro quo, no quid pro quo controversy between him and Ambassador Sondland. So Taylor testified, and his opening remarks have been made public, and he said that he was told point blank by Sondland that Ukrainian aid could have been held up to push an announcement on the Burisma investigation. So basically, Taylor is saying that, yes, there was quid pro quo. And here's a point that I want to make on this, because I've seen people kind of twist this a little way that I think is a little disingenuous. What was being asked for here was not an investigation into Burisma. It was for Zelensky to make a public announcement that there would be an investigation. It was nobody ever seemed to care whether the investigation happened or not. What was wanted was the public announcement. If that is true, if Trump decided to hold up Ukrainian aid based on trying to put pressure on the Ukrainian president to make a public announcement about an investigation into Burisma, which is the company that employed Hunter Biden, I don't see how anyone can make an argument that A, that wasn't quid pro quo, and B, that wasn't Trump acting in his own personal interest. Because like I said, he wasn't asking for an investigation. He's asking for a public announcement. And if he was genuinely interested in an investigation, he could have just went to Zelensky and said, hey, just open an investigation. You don't have to make a big deal about it. You could just go ahead and do that right over here. That's not what was asked. So trying to conflate this with, well, the U.S. holds up aid all the time to get XYZ. Well, normally XYZ is supposed to be something that is in the national interest, not in the president's interest, and not in the president's personal re-election interest. So yeah, if that is true, then that is pretty damning. And it seemed like from what has been released of Ambassador Sondland's testimony that Taylor's testimony contradicted it. But I have seen reports come out since then that apparently in Sondland's testimony, he did say that there was a quid pro quo. So we shall see. But yeah, Taylor testifying was a huge deal earlier this week, and especially because he did say that he was told this is the plan, that Ukrainian aid is going to be held up to put pressure on Zelensky to make a public announcement about an investigation into Burisma. So, yeah, that's not very good for Trump. And the other impeachment testimony story that broke this week is that apparently one John Bolton is playing footsie with whether or not he will go testify in front of a House committee, which that would be nuts. Could you imagine if after everything that has happened, John fucking Bolton is the one to put an end to all of this? John Bolton! Does anybody like John Bolton? But we're about to see John Bolton resistance hero. And by the way, he has a book deal, which obviously, because everybody has a book deal, Bolton has a book deal. But there's a case pending with somebody else in court where they are asking whether a demand from the White House or the State Department could be breached to go give testimony in front of a House committee. If it is decided that, yes, you can defy a direct order to not go testify and go testify, woo, that gets us one step closer to Bolton testifying. But that remains to be seen. That is up in the air. But if John Bolton testifies, that might break political Twitter. Like, it might just be finally the clean psychotic break, and none of us come back alive from it. But moving on from that to the dumbest political stunt I've seen in a long time. And that is Matt Gaetz and a ragtag bunch of Republican House members who I would like to go ahead and say off the rip, over a dozen of the members that participated in this little stunt basically trying to make an argument that Republicans are being iced out of this. Nobody will tell us anything. They won't give us access to anything. I think it's 13 of the people who decided to go do this actually do sit on relative House committees that do have access to this information and have been participating in the questioning of various people. So, first of all, I would just like to go ahead and just get out of the way. This idea that Republicans are being iced out of this whole process is bullshit. But Gaetz leads this team of Republicans into a SCIF. Now, what a SCIF is, because nobody knew what a SCIF was before this. Don't play like you did. A SCIF is a sensitive compartmented information facility, which basically what it is, and it can be anywhere. I mean, they can set them up pretty much anywhere where you could do this kind of setup. It's a secured room, facility, whatever. Basically, it's for the either airing or reading of sensitive material. And these rooms are set up. You cannot have any electronics in there. You cannot have any recording devices. You cannot have any video devices. They are wired to be soundproof. They are wired to disrupt any radio waves. I mean, basically, it's meant to be a completely secure facility so that anything that is said or disseminated within the SCIF is secure and stays that way. So these idiots decide they're going to go storm a SCIF where the House Intelligence Committee was hosting a inquiry and an investigation into there was somebody that was giving testimony. So they barge into the room with their cell phones, videotaping and audio taping. And so obviously, as soon as they come in, Adam Schiff, who was running it because he's the head of the Intelligence Committee, shuts the whole damn thing down because now security's been compromised. You've got these Republicans who are in the room and are refusing to leave. So basically, everybody else who was in the room that was there for the questioning, they all leave because obviously, I mean, you can't do the questioning at that point. These idiots decide they're going to sit down and order pizza and basically grandstand like a bunch of jackasses to try to protest the lack of transparency in these proceedings. Now, let me go ahead and give you a contrast to another House committee inquiry that was open and transparent and did have cameras involved. And that would be the Facebook hearings. Apparently Zuckerberg, and this all happened on Wednesday, Zuckerberg was hauled into a House Congressional Committee over Libra, which is going to be Facebook's crypto. Think of that whatever you will. But anyway, for some godforsaken reason, and I don't know why Congress has such a hard-on for these tech hearings, because nobody knows how any of this shit works, and they make it so obvious every single time. But anyway, they haul Zuckerberg in here to ask him, ostensibly, questions about Libra. But because it's an open hearing and there's cameras everywhere, basically everybody took their 15 minutes to get up on their soapbox and try to shoehorn whatever their personal pet whatever is into these questions. And Zuckerberg is just sitting there like, why are you asking me this? Like at one point, somebody brought up anti-vaccinations. And it's just like, am I not here to talk about Libra? I'm very confused. And it turned into a total fucking circus, just like every single one of these hearings does. I make that point to make this point about the concept of open hearings versus closed hearings. I don't trust this Congress or any Congress to have open hearings at this point, especially when you're questioning people who are probably giving information that is somewhat classified or at very least is incredibly explosive. I don't trust these idiots. If there was a camera around and if these questionings were open, to not make total fucking jackasses out of themselves. Because that's what Congress people do when they have a camera in front of them and a microphone. Nobody takes it seriously. So for all of the complaining, all of the bitching, all the moaning about, oh, they're not making these questionings public, there's no transparency, blah, 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 blah. I'm just like, you know what? At this point, taking depositions from these people, I do not think should be done publicly, because this is serious business. You're asking people who not only have various sorts of security clearances, probably questions that involve information that you would only know if you had those security clearances. I want the people in the room asking the questions to be taking their jobs seriously and not grandstanding in front of a camera and acting like a dipshit so you could get invited on the news to talk about how you acted like a dipshit. Like, there's just the lack of seriousness that is present now in open congressional hearings just pretty much seals it for me. And sure, make the transparency argument, but understand what the alternative is and think about whether that would be better than having these depositions being taken in a SCIF where you can control the amount of information that comes out. And obviously, information has come out, clearly. I've talked about it multiple times. But, yeah, it's just, the contrast was just too stark for me. For both of these things to be happening on the same day, it's just like, and do not wonder why people want to take these depositions. in private and not in public. Because look at these fucking jackasses. They're going to screw the whole damn thing up. And I would just assume them not screw this up. So anyway, that happened. I told you there's a lot of nonsense that happened this week. So moving on from that to yet more nonsense. And this is a story that I'm not going to give a lot of time to because quite frankly, I'm freaking over it. But yes, Hilary called Tulsi a Russian asset, and then the New York Times tried to walk it back, but then everybody heard that Hilary did indeed call Tulsi a Russian asset. There, that happened. But seriously, how this whole thing started is Hilary was on a podcast, and she was talking about God knows what, because if you listen to the audio of this particular section, it's just like, what the hell are you talking about, woman? She's talking about deep fakes and the dark web and like flashing videos and they disappear and then you can't find them again, and how they're influencing elections and fake news and all this other weird shit. Like, I don't know what she was going on about, but at one point she makes it, and she never says Tulsi by name, but it's pretty clear she's talking about Tulsi. And she makes this argument that they, quote unquote, they are grooming a certain candidate who is a favorite of the Russian bots to engage in a third-party run to do what exactly? I don't fucking know. This is so stupid. Anyway, she puts that out there. And like I said, she never said Tulsi by name, but, I mean, there's only one candidate out there who has been constantly called a Russian asset or a Russian bot or propped up by Russian propaganda, and that's Tulsi. Like, we know she was talking about Tulsi. And then even after that part, she went to go talk about Jill Stein for some godforsaken reason. I don't know why the fuck are we talking about Jill Stein in 2019, but talking about Jill Stein and how she was a Russian asset too, which is how we get back around to Hilary calling Tulsi a Russian asset. So, that all blows up. And then the New York Times tries to walk it back in a very ham-fisted way, in where they go back and stealth edit the original story to take out Russians and replace it with Republicans, basically to try to make the argument that, oh no, Hilary was saying that the Republicans are grooming her for a third-party run, which makes even less fucking sense. But this is where we're at. This is the story. Do you see why I'm tired of this story? It's the stupidest thing ever, but this is my job, so I will tell you about it. So, anyway, yeah, that happened. And then, basically, Tulsi calls Hilary out and called her the queen of the warmongers and the personification of the rot in the system. And kind of the last shot that I don't think got enough attention was that Tulsi basically dared Hilary to join the race and fight her, like, on stage. Yeah. That is the last thing we need right now, is Hilary joining this godforsaken race. But Tulsi threw down the gauntlet at her, and, well, Hilary hasn't joined the race yet. And let's hope she doesn't, because, guys, no. I know, it's funny, but no. Come on, don't. It's already enough of a shit show. Let's not add Hilary to this. So anyway, that is the Hilary-Tulsi drama. Anyway, moving on to something a little more serious, and that is that it came out this week that, obviously, you guys know about the Syrian troop shuffle, how we're moving troops out of northern Syria to points beyond that seem to be shifting on a regular basis. The original idea was to move some of them to Iraq, and then Iraq is like, no, you can't do that. So which tells me that they didn't bother to ask Iraq if they would be cool with us just moving our troops to go hang out over there. So apparently that's going to be a no-go. So we don't really know where the hell these poor troops are going to end up. But we are apparently sending more troops into a different part of Syria. We're sending them to eastern Syria. And do you know what's in eastern Syria? Oil fields. Yeah. We got to go protect the oil. Does this sound familiar to anybody else? This Syria situation exhausts me because so many people just went all the way in on supporting him on this. And I'm just like, you know what, guys, wait for it. And here we are. So we're still moving the troops out of northern Syria, but we're going to go put more troops in eastern Syria to help defend the oil fields so that what is left of ISIS, which I thought we had defeated, doesn't move in and take control of the oil fields, but I guess still fuck the Kurds, I guess. Dude, you guys, it's just... This has just been handled so poorly, and I can't. I really can't. And God bless everybody who thought Trump was going to be different, but here you guys go. Here you go. No different. Absolute same. Still got to go protect that oil, even though it's not our oil and it's not our country. And I was told by the president that it's not our business and not our concern what goes on in Syria and that they need to handle their own business. But I guess oil fields don't count when we're talking about handling your own business, I suppose. So, anyway, that, I think, pretty much covers everything that we needed to talk about over this past week. Like I said, there was a lot going on, and then it just all got really, really crazy at the end. And next week will probably be really, really crazy too. So, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. So, if you did make it this far, as always, thank you. And if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, and on my Patreon page. Take care, and until next time.